Hey, deep divers, ready to unlock some next level public speaking skills? We're doing a deep dive into Dale Carnegie's The Art of Public Speaking using your top picks from this classic.
Always a good one to revisit. Timeless advice in there.
It really is. And what gets me every time is how Carnegie just cuts right to it. No fluff, just start speaking now, even if you feel totally unprepared.
It's that classic advice like ripping off a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
He even compares it to like a cold plunge,
Yeah.
jarring at first, but then invigorating.
Totally. And it's funny, that whole jump in thing, it's so current, even though the book's from way back. Like today we talk about imposter syndrome, overthinking. Carnegie was onto something.
Absolutely. Action over perfection, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I love that story he tells about Daniel Webster. This guy, legendary order, but his very first speech, total flop, frozen with nerves, couldn't even finish.
See, proof that everyone starts somewhere, even the all-time greats. It's so easy to get caught up in thinking, oh, they were just naturals. But nope. Practice, and even messing up, that's part of the journey.
This deep dive, this is a form of practice. Even just listening and discussing.
So true. But even better if you think of this episode less like passive listening, more like, okay, how can I use this in my own speaking?
Now we're talking, because it's all about taking these principles and making them your own.
Exactly. And one thing Carnegie emphasizes is it's not about putting on a show. Not about being the loudest voice or trying to copy some super charismatic speaker you've seen online.
Nope. It's about tapping into your genuine enthusiasm. That's what he keeps coming back to.
Because when you're fired up, people feel it. That energy, it's contagious.
100%. And on the flip side, if you're not invested, audiences pick up on that too. He compares it to like a song with no emotion, just monotone. Nobody wants to hear that.
Ouch. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And I think that's why being genuine resonates. It builds trust, not just, oh, they seem nice.
It's a connection, deeper than just being likable. Like, I trust what this person is saying.
And that makes people want to listen. Which brings us to something Carnegie talks about that's so often overlooked. The power of the pause.
Yes, we think powerful speaking, we think constant stream of words. But silence, used strategically, huge impact.
Counterintuitive, right? But think about when you're truly captivated by someone talking. What do?
You lean in, you're anticipating what's next. You're giving their words space to land.
And a good pause, that's what it does for your audience.
Ugh.
Time to process, let it sink in.
And it's not just for them. Taking those pauses, it helps you as the speaker too.
Oh, for sure. Collect your thoughts, really land a point. Gives you that extra beat to make sure it lands right.
Like taking a breath, almost. Not just air, but like a mental breath between ideas.
I love that Carnegie says, watch how pauses happen naturally, especially with kids. They're amazing at it.
Oh, totally. Like a kid's about to tell you something exciting, that little pause before builds the anticipation.
Pure instinct. And we can learn from that. Speaking of grabbing attention, good stories. Carnegie was all about their power.
Our brains are wired for them. Emotional connection, easier to remember. Stories help us make sense of the world.
And he's got great examples of using vivid descriptions, like painting a picture, you feel like you're right there.
Dickens, describing something as one vast, substantial smile. Just a few words, but so evocative.
Right. Sometimes the simplest language is the strongest, and you don't need to overthink it. Carnegie's point is everyday life is full of stories.
That chance meeting, the childhood memory that still makes you laugh, those are gold mines for authentic speeches.
Tapping into those universal experiences. And speaking of drawing from real life, Carnegie's big on that with gestures, too.
Not talk about being fake or over the top, but like how a kid points when they're excited, someone throwing their arms up in victory. Borrow from those real moments.
He makes it less scary, more like, okay, I can do that.
Exactly. It's finding the natural expression that fits what you're saying, adding to it, not distracting. And this whole body language thing, it lines up with all the modern research, too.
We've all been there, right? Someone's words are saying one thing, their body's saying the opposite. Totally throws you off.
Because our brains are picking up on it, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah.
And that nonverbal stuff, it can either help or hurt your message big time.
So it's not just what you say, it's the HLW. Your posture, eye contact, even those little movements. They all say something.
Being present, engaged, and not just with your words. And on that note, Carnegie's got a whole chapter about really understanding your audience.
He's big on this. A speech isn't one size fits all. Gotta tailor it.
What are they into? What are their worries? Do they even know much about this topic? Asking those questions at the start.
He even compares it to, like, a salesperson who doesn't know their own product.
Recipe for disaster.
For real, because if you don't get who you're talking to, how can you connect on any real level?
That connection is everything. It's what makes people lean in, want to hear more, be persuaded.
Finding that shared ground. And one of the best ways to do that, personal stories, bringing yourself into it.
Carnegie talks about how sharing those moments, being a little vulnerable, it creates huge GE connection.
Letting them see you, the human behind the words. That's when they really start to listen.
Trust building, essential for your message to land. And I find it fascinating how he breaks down the types of speaking. Exposition, description, arguing a point. Gives examples for each one.
So helpful, because then you're not just thinking public speaking in general. You're like, okay, what kind of speech am I actually giving?
Exactly. And he doesn't stop at the structure. Vivid language, stories, even humor, bringing it all to life.
He loved a good story to get a point across, like that one about the old shoemaker. His shop sign said, founded 1760, emphasizing how long he'd been around.
And his competitor, new guy, his sign said, established 1886, no old stock kept in this shop.
So smart, using the story to say, my stuff's fresh.
Brilliant. And it goes back to knowing your audience, playing to that. But it's not all stories. Building a solid argument using logic, that matters too.
And he gives advice for that, like how to avoid those logical fallacies, which, let's be real, they're everywhere these days.
It's about equipping people to not just persuade, but to spot BS when they hear it.
To think critically, which, man, more important than ever. But even beyond the how-tos of speeches, what struck me about Carnegie is the ethics of it all.
Easy to forget when you're caught up in giving the presentation, trying to win people over.
But he's clear. Persuasion, it's a tool. Use it for good. No manipulation, no tricking people.
Integrity, honesty, respecting your audience. He hammers that home.
He even says, a speaker who's in it just for themselves, they're not a real public speaker at all.
Strong words.
Yeah.
But it shows how much weight he puts on this. Having the skill to move people with your words, that's powerful stuff.
It's that with great power, unquote. And the goal should be to uplift, inspire, not to take advantage.
And that's something to aim for, right? No matter if it's a stage full of people or just talking to a friend.
Speaking of aiming high, love how Carnegie ends by saying, this speaking thing, it's not a finish line you cross. It's ongoing.
Always learning, always refining. Never stop practicing.
Not to be perfect, but to keep getting better. He even compares it to, like, playing music. It takes time, dedication to master it.
But the payoff's huge. The confidence you gain, the clarity in how you communicate, that impacts everything.
And it's that commitment to growth. That's the difference between good and great speakers. You know, going through all this Carnegie wisdom, I keep thinking about that line, thinking is work.
So simple, but so true. Because, yeah, getting better at this, it's not just memorizing tricks or practicing how you stand.
It's about really wrestling with the ideas, not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. Questioning things, getting to the heart of it. That's where it goes from information to something way more powerful.
It becomes something you live, not just recite.
And that's what comes through, in your words, your presence.
Yeah.
That's the captivating stuff.
So as we wrap up our Carnegie deep dive, here's a challenge for everyone listening. Think of your next speaking gig, big or small.
What's that one thing in your speech you can really dig into? Go beyond the obvious.
A stat you can make relatable, a story that brings it to life. Or even just truly getting the emotion you want people to feel.
Because when you do that deep work, those connections, that's what makes you a more informed, confident speaker.
And there you have it, deep divers. We dove into the timeless advice of Dale Carnegie, from conquering nerves to crafting your message and connecting on a deeper level.
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about always growing, always learning when it comes to communication.
So go out there, find your voice, share what you've got, and never underestimate a well-placed pause. Until next time.